Talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. Your magical kiss will take me just so far. Talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. Don't leave me like this, dangling from a star. You set me all aflame and it's so pleasing. It sure would be a shame if you were only teasing. So my love, before I go, turn the lights way down low and talk to me. Talk to me, talk to me. I continue to mention a quote by Martin Luther back almost 500 years ago, when he said that cowardice asked the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor polite, nor popular. But he must take it because his conscience tells him or her it is right. Now, conscience comes from the divine, comes from what we all are a part of. Yes, we always have had a group in our culture. The more educated we became, the more we became prey to agnostics and atheists, and they're entitled to their opinion. That's the beautiful thing in this country, especially. However, even in ancient times, there has always been an acknowledgement. Even cavemen acknowledged a power greater than themselves. Pagans worshipped a god or goddesses or multiple gods, but they recognized, even in their low educational, non-educational, just basic condition, that there was something that was in control of part of their lives, if not all of their lives. We've forgotten that because we've become so arrogant through technology and through listening to people who have their own designs and unfortunately don't believe in something after this span of life. Well, before we get into the news of the day, I just want to set it up because I've talked about different things that have gone on too in my life. By the way, I want to thank, I've heard from some Plymouth people about the show. We are on YouTube. You can get the Don McKeag Show on YouTube. And we are also, this show is rerun. I will give you I've got the sheet somewhere. I know it's on Tuesday at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's on Monday at 11 o'clock at night. And Sunday it's on, I believe, at 6 or 7. We are on, I guess, Kenny, right, 13 or 14 different towns that picked this show up. But you can see it another week, or tell if you like what you hear, if you'd like to hear it again. But there was a man that lived back in the 40s, Vernon Howard. He wrote I have this that I use on my radio show. I haven't for quite a while. I'm going to use it this Saturday because of what's going on in this patriot issue, along with other political issues. But it's just part of a continued look at the insanity of today's culture. It's the insanity of today's culture. And Vernon Howard had this little book called Inside the Lunatic Asylum Society. And this particular book was copyrighted in 1961. I've had it for all those years. But Vernon wrote in the 40s. And I'd just like to have you digest this little bit as I read. And think about today. If you watch the news over football games, and you watch the politicians, you listen to the politicians, and you look at the crime rate, you watch that foolish, ingenious invention, television, and see what a mess we've made of it because of the insanity of people in general. And just listen to how this applies to our society. Human society is one gigantic lunatic asylum, but the inmates don't know they are lunatics, which is why they remain lunatics. Society's lunatic asylum includes people both inside and outside the stone walls of a mental hospital. Those on the inside are simply more obviously out of control. Those on the outside are simply better actors. The cause of a crazy world is crazy people. What else? But everyone thinks he is the exception. He, of course, is a perfectly sane and decent person, while it is the others who are evil. This delusion is part of his madness. Only awareness of lunacy can cure it. Only consciousness of being all wrong can make everyone all right. No society or government can behave any higher than its lunacy level. The lunacy level is the average level of mental illness in any group or country. So since society consists of individuals, the only way to lower the lunacy level is for a self-honest individual to stop lying about his or her. Now, his is including men and women. His or her spiritual illness, and allow truth to heal him. But there are so few who place truth above egotism. Senseless people always react with the same lies when exposed by sanity. They are never original in their frenzied attack against reality. For example, they accuse truth tellers of being negative. How often do you hear that now? People like me, you tell the truth, you put the facts out there, we're called negative. But it is the lunatics themselves who are negative. Their own shrieking hatred proves it. But with their usual dishonesty, they refuse to see this fact. There is only one truly positive force in the universe. It is God, reality, truth. Those three things: God, reality, and truth. One reason people remain inside the lunatic asylum is because they cannot understand mental crime, which is invisible. They can only understand visible crimes like murder and robbery. But for every crime observable with physical sight, there are 10,000 mental crimes which remain unseen by spiritually asleep human beings. This includes intimidating people with cruel threats, misleading others with false information, taking advantage of human weakness for personal profit. It also includes the invisible crime of constant self-deception, by which an individual keeps himself in mental chains. All of this is part of the lunatic asylum. Just listen to the description of the press right in here. Intimidating people with cruel threats, misleading others with false information, taking advantage of human weakness for personal profit, and self-deceiving yourself. These reporters, these other people, these politicians that are lying to us, they're deceiving themselves, and they remain in their own mental chains. Few people ever see the full horror of the human condition. Why? Because the lunatics outside the walls have all conspired to call each other sane. You can do much better. You can live as apart from human madness as a mountain cabin is apart from a noisy city. Imagine a man who hears about a buried treasure, which he eagerly seeks. Then he hears about a second treasure, then a third, then a fourth. So he turns toward each of them. So he wearily seeks, changes directions, but never finds. People desperately seek the treasure of wealth or security or love, growing scared and confused as the prize eludes them. But the weary wandering can end. It ends with when the individual finds a new kind of treasure, that of spiritual sanity. Then he has some stories. Now, I hope you've heard what that means. And I pull this out because it's been, those of you that have followed me on the radio, I've been on there 20 years on the Cape. It's WXTK 95.1 FM on Cape Cod. I try to just inform. I get overly exuberant, I get critical, I get judgmental, and I'm not happy with that. I'm so frustrated because it was this that I was coming from, and now it came to me. And this is really the answer. The answer is we have lost our central. We've lost our core values that came from divine guidance. Our founding fathers came here to escape what we have become. And we've become this way because we've diminished our spiritual strength. We are spiritually weakened. We are spiritually bankrupt. And along with it has come the moral issues, the greed. I mentioned the 7 deadly sins. And when you see what has become priorities today, we have the entire country on television focusing on a football game, focusing on the air in the footballs, pointing fingers, holding athletic teams, individuals involved in an athletic team to higher standards than they're holding their president, their governor, their lawyers, their judges. I guess they're frustrated in terms of gender, but I believe it's because they're not educated enough in the political world because they don't care if they've, again, the lunatic asylum, if they have achieved wealth, physical wealth, material gain. Everything seems to be going well in their family. They think they have it made, and yet they don't know why they're unhappy. I went through this. I still battle with it. I was one of these people. I'm not a preacher. This isn't meant to be preaching. Never have I've been very spiritual, believed in God, but I've never been a real church goer or anything else. And I know why. I was one of the insane, which I still can be. I'm one of that lunatics, and that is I wanted to do things my way, and I saw value in who you were, what you had. And this is just to get us to ponder individually, because the only thing we can do now is to try to change ourselves a little, try to influence our kids, our neighbors, our employees, and our politicians, hold them to a standard. We're holding the New England Patriots to a higher standard than we are the President of the United States. We have a governor that's just left office without a balanced budget, which is against the law. billions of dollars, over $700 billion. This state is in debt. You people who work in government, you're underfunded, if not non-funded, in your pensions. And yet we have no fiscal responsibility done by these politicians, as we haven't for years. They print more money. They spend more money. They have federal grants. They have state grant money. They haven't got any money to cover pensions of people who've worked their whole lives. They pump up the stock market. So I just, and this particular, these press conferences, I don't know if some ball boy or somebody came but I do know that the ball didn't play the game. See, this is what I mean about common sense. The press, the television, the greed, this insane people who think they're sane. There are going to be bars filled right now with reporters and TV camera people laughing about how they're going after Tom Brady. They're going after these Patriots. They're going to bring them down over something that, one, even if there has been something done, it's not the end of the world. It's a football game. It's not people's pensions. It's not a town's being able to survive and have a budget. What happens if all of a sudden we have everyone do what Deval Patrick did? No accountability. But they're holding athletic teams accountable in ways they don't hold their own. This president has gone against the Constitution dozens of times, and he gets a pass. His spending, we are in trillions and trillions of dollars when his promises were to lower the debt. All he did was get, and the rest of them are just as bad. Congress is just as bad. They want to get reelected. It doesn't affect their pension, doesn't affect their health care, doesn't affect their salaries, and they get reelected. That's all they care about. So I just, in following up with this insane asylum, this is one of our states. I hate to be so negative, but we'll get back, and again, if the phones are working, I hate to do it, but because, to talk about the Patriots, but I would like to see if anyone is seeing where I'm coming from here. I'm part of you out there. I am not holding myself up. I hope I explained that previously. I've been guilty of being part of the insane. I've been insane. I've done a lot of things in my life that were part of the insanity, getting away from basic fundamental rights and wrongs that this culture has become, and we are now paying for it. But just listen to this is the largest insane asylum in the world, it's called, and it's the state of California. Remember, it's bigger than most countries in the world, the state of California. Bigger than just about every single country, I think every single country in Europe. California is bigger. It's got a bigger economy, yet it's only one of our 50 states in the Union. Or is it 51? I'll have to ask Obama. He said it was 56, didn't he? 51. I know. Anyway, listen, and this was done, by the way, by the Los Angeles Times, a liberal rag that, again, supports Democrats no matter what they do. But it's just unbelievable that they even had this in the paper. Now, think of how long can you last when you have this. And we're not far off in this state. 40% of all the workers in Los Angeles County, which has 10.2 million. That's just one county, Los Angeles County in California. They're working for cash and not paying taxes. All right, let's equate that with Massachusetts. we have illegals and legals. I know. I owned restaurants. I will say this in all honesty, I never paid anyone cash that worked for me on a regular basis. They had a check. I checked their documentation. But again, that didn't mean they were legal. There's all sorts of fraudulent documents, and I'll admit, if I needed a worker and there was a good worker, I wasn't too quick to check to see if they were frauds or not, because I said, well, if they're showing it to me, now that's not right either, I suppose. But we have an awful lot of these workers that are in here that are taking jobs, and that's fine. They're good workers. This is not talking against the immigrants, legal or illegal. I'm more against the Americans who refuse to work and get a check for 99 weeks without even trying to get a job, thanks to, again, Congress. But anyway, imagine the tax dollars. Here's Obama going to let in 5 to 7 million illegals on top of already, and I know they're low. There's already about 20 or 18 million here. Imagine how many. We have 330 million people thereabouts in this country, and I'll bet 30 million of them are illegal. And how many of them aren't paying taxes? This is just Los Angeles. I guarantee in the state of Massachusetts there are no taxes coming in. Now, what you don't get, some of you people, the liberal thinkers, is it isn't, oh, they don't pay any taxes, oh, well, they're poor. That's not it. What it is paying taxes is what allows these budgets to be paid to libraries, to village greens, to all these things that, quote, the state gives money to. You build a high school. The state, how many times have you heard this in Plymouth? Oh, the state's going to match these funds. Who's the state? You're paying that too. Anybody that's building a school is paying, not only if they own property in their town, they're paying their share, and then they're paying the other share because the state is already giving us taxes. Well, anyway, so Los Angeles, 40% in this one county of 10 million. So figure that out. Half of 10.2 million is 5.1. So take another 10% off. So say a little over 4 million people are working for cash and they're not paying any taxes. That's 4 million in one state. Now this is rampant in this whole country. No Republicans, Democrats, none of it. Nobody's going after that. They're sitting in their ivory tower. They're getting their pension. They're getting their time off. They're going to have lifetime health care. I mean, it's disgraceful. But anyway, that's one part. 95% of the warrants for murder in Los Angeles County are for illegal aliens. Why doesn't the Globe, the Herald, or anyone, have you ever seen them do an honest Cape Cod Times, Providence Journal? Anybody ever think, or does anyone that's the editor or the chief or whatever of these newspapers, hey, I'm going to send a reporter down and find out how many of these people appearing in court on a daily basis are here illegally, and I'm not talking about being stopped and not having a driver's license, which is bad enough. I'm talking about for serious crimes. They don't seem to care about that. I don't know how many hundreds of people in the state of Massachusetts have been killed by an illegal alien driving a car with no license. But reporters, male, female, from all over the country have been here grilling the patriots about how much air was in the footballs. You think we're not an insane asylum? 75% of people on the most wanted list in Los Angeles County are illegal aliens. 75% of on the most wanted, murderers, rapists. Obama's taken 5 or 6 more million in here illegally. The insane asylum is alive and well. That's why this one's the biggest. Over 2/3 of all births in Los Angeles County now are to illegal alien Mexicans on Medicare. Their births are paid for by you and me. This is our Congress, both parties. I don't mean they all went for it. Only Republicans seem to have voted against it. That's why I'm death on the Democratic Party. Absolutely down on them. Nearly 35% of all inmates in California detention centers are Mexican nationals here illegally. Over 300,000 illegal aliens in Los Angeles County are living in garages. Oh, isn't that sad? No, what's sad is that they're here in the first place. They're here illegally. You people that have your own private box at the Gillette Stadium. How'd you like if you walked in and had a Mexican sitting in your chair with no ticket? You'd say, oh, fine, that's perfect. No, you wouldn't. You self-centered cheapskate. You know. When it affects you, you won't stand for it. The FBI reports half of all gang members in Los Angeles are most likely illegal aliens from south of the border. Well, the reason they don't know definitely is because there are so many areas in Los Angeles where the gangs are controlling the entire neighborhoods, they won't send cops in there. In America. Here's a great one. 60% of occupants of HUD properties are illegal. HUD. Housing and Urban Development, paid by you and me for worthy Americans who've lost their jobs, or the father has died or has a bad heart and can't work. That's who's supposed to get the housing. 60% of them are occupants that are illegal. Now, how does that happen in an honest society? Do you think the people running HUD, that we, the taxpayer, that's what we expected them to do? Never mind 60%, there should be 0% of illegals in HUD housing. 21 radio stations are Spanish-speaking. Los Angeles County, 5.1 million people speak English, 3.9 million speak Spanish. There are 10.2 million. So, I mean, here we are, almost 4 million and just 5 million. So Spanish is up almost equal to English. Almost equal in an supposedly English-speaking country. Less than 2% of illegals, though, are picking the crops. 29% are on welfare, though. Only 2% are actually working. So all the liberals that say, oh, it's the fault of these growers. It's the fault of all these fruit men, these wealthy people with too much money. Of course, do you ever wonder how many Democrats that you know of that have been in political office that were wealthy? Has there been any? Like the Kennedys, the Rockefellers? I mean, there are every bit as many Democrats that are multi-billionaires, millionaires as there are Republicans, but they've got that whole genre out there that it's just the Republicans who have wealthy, and you fall for it. So anyway, this is part of the lunatic asylum condensed into one state. One state. And I repeat, all of it goes back to one easily understood. We have moved away from the divine power that brought us all here. We were brought by a divine power. What our destination is very little of our own business. Why do little children die in accidents or otherwise? I don't know. It's easy to turn bitter. I haven't gone through that. I feel so terribly for anyone who has. I hope never to go through that. But again, this is part of, is it just about now, or do we have any faith? If you don't have faith, then you don't have a belief in what I'm talking about. And I think it is proven And history tells us, look at what Hitler, look at what Stalin did. First thing they did was to make religion illegal. They smashed churches. We talk about Hitler with the Jews. We don't talk about how they got people out of the churches. They destroyed churches. Christianity and other religions were illegal in Russia. They had to have secret meetings. Now, is there any parallel, do you suppose, between tyrants who enslave their own people and the fact that they don't want any kind of God in the hearts of the people? I don't think it takes a rocket science. It's not rocket science to figure that out. It's, I don't know, I couldn't watch the State of the Union because I just, those of you that watched, I just don't believe in this man, and I don't believe in the Democratic Party leadership any longer, and I'm just amazed at how many continue to, in any respect. I always have qualified it by saying, well, I was a former teacher, proud of it. I think a lot of teachers, I admire them, so many wonderful people. But I'll tell you, one of the things that has come up now in this inability to balance the state budget is the fact that there has been no courage in Beacon Hill and in the governorship. This man, Deval Patrick, should have had to pay for not balancing the budget. It is by law. He swore an oath. So did the President of the United States, and yet they're not being held accountable to it. But the Patriots are being held accountable for the air and the footballs. Now, I'm not condoning it if there's something was done wrong. All I do know is the air and the football didn't influence the score. And do you notice again why I despise the news people and the television? They're negative anyway, and they call us negative, people like me. But Andrew Luck was asked about the game. He said the balls weren't any part of the game. He said it was a fair and square game. They won the game. But how many times have you seen his interview on? Other quarterbacks have been interviewed. What's his name for Green Bay? Rodgers. He said, I like the balls hard. But he didn't indicate that this has been going on in football I played baseball. I mean, years and years in baseball. Even now it goes on with the stick. They would use, some pitchers would gunk up the ball or scrape the ball. The catchers would do it to get an edge. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying it's been part of that game. And I still don't believe the Patriots, I don't believe Belichick or Brady had anything to do with any of it. And they aren't focusing on one of the things that Belichick had to say, and that was, which is very relative, I forget now, forgive me if it's not the perfect numbers, but it's something like there's a range of like 13.2 or whatever. I know it's 12.5 pounds per square inch. But his point was well taken. Of course, it would never be. I kept saying when I watched it, I said, drive that home. Now, if there was 2 or 3 points lower, if they'd been overfilled, in other words, that's what he basically said. They'll fill the balls more to account for when and I heard a guy call in too that said, he was an engineer, and he said if the leather balls or whatever, if they get wet and they stay wet for a long time, the tendency is to lose some air. But his point was, this is, if the loss of air, if they'd been filled more than what was required, then the loss of air still would have allowed the ball to be considered all right. but because they had just filled them at the top, at whatever it was, the air lost went below what was considered to be properly inflated. It didn't mean it was down and half filled. It meant that 11 of those balls, for whatever reason, lost some air. Now, I'm not excusing Patriots. I'm not one of these nutcases that the Patriots can do no wrong. But I don't believe that anything has happened here other than either a mistake by, I don't know what, in terms of who inflated the balls. But to think that a championship game that the coaches, that they're going to be diddling around with the ball, to me, is again, part of the insanity and part of the need of the press to make stories that aren't stories, and they're always negative stories. Kenny, did you have something you wanted to add to this? I see you there. I'm glad to see you. Ken Bukes is the man in the shadows.
Thank you, Don. I was here in case you needed to take a sip of water, and also to mention that there have been numerous clips on the internet with interviews with other ball teams. And there was one clip that I borrowed from somebody else. It was of Jim Nantz discussing a Green Bay, I believe it was Green Bay, who was, the quarterback was discussing that whenever he wanted to play in a game, regardless of the weather, he wanted a ball that was softer so that he could grip it and send it flying. He got more control out of the ball.
Correct.
And I have seen 3 different quarterbacks that have made the same comment during the regular season.
That's correct.
Of play.
Correct.
So my spin on this is they just want to turn around and say something nasty about somebody that got caught doing something wrong a couple of years ago, 2007.
That's true.
And they're just trying to smear them.
Well, and they just, if those of us that regularly watch the Boston teams, but especially the Patriots, there is definitely a negativity. They don't, and Bill Belichick has brought on a lot of it in terms of his cursory after the game. I've always said he could do a better job, because as much as I despise the reporters, they're only doing their job, and he could have been and could be more cordial. But Bill Parcells was bad too. So, but that being said, then you get Aaron Rodgers that comes out and says, "I prefer the ball to be firm."
Yes.
I mean, but that is not what the issue is. The issue is they don't say, these reporters, no one wants to say, well, then have you ever asked the ball boy? Or have you ever tried to get the ball? This is what Tom Brady, I watched, that was trying to, I've never been involved in fooling around with the balls. Of course I say what I prefer. And then Belichick did a great job, I thought, in saying I make the balls just as lousy to deal with as possible. Just in what he was basically saying. Of course, nobody wants to give him the benefit anymore. They don't want the benefit. What he was saying is, if you make the ball different all the time and make it difficult, then they're not expecting a particular ball to be the same all the time, and you make that adjustment.
The point to be
the physicality of these athletes, ladies and gentlemen, to think that they don't make adjustments to a ball is crazy. And one of the other things is, Brady fires that ball, so do most quarterbacks. You and I, and high school ends and receivers and college ends, a huge percentage of them wouldn't be able to handle it. I mean, the public has no idea the skill that it takes for those receivers to be doing what they're doing in frigid conditions or other, to just catch any ball. And this is what infuriates those of us that have been around athletics and know a little something about what the players are going through. And all this does is churn up negative feeling and get ratings up. And that's all they care about. They don't care what they've done. I understand this, and Brady, they're all talking about the integrity of the game. And that's what's so great about Brady. And I know they mean it. But it's the press that's making a story out of something that is no big story. Kenny, go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
It's your show.
No,
I was
come on, no.
interrupting you.
I don't know. I want to listen.
The point to be made was that they were losing the game at halftime before anything come up about the ball.
Correct.
They lost the game in the second half because they still couldn't do anything, even though the ball was supposedly at 12 and a half pounds of air. They couldn't put it together in the first half, never mind in the second half.
Yep.
And one commentator said, and this I thought was hysterical, they could have had a bar of soap and they wouldn't have won. So,
but again, when you're trying to create a story and create what the media does today is live off of negativity, churn people's things up. Why? I hope you appreciated what I was saying about the lunatic asylum, because we are lunatics. Our society is, so many people don't even know they're insane, don't even know they don't have that peace and inner contentment that those people who have spiritual cores, who have their head together, that are religiously accepting of life, that it's no big deal. You know, remember that book that came out, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff? Yes, it's all small stuff. Right. Well, that's only the case when you're spiritually fit and you recognize we're only here for a short time. We can just pray for the health of our kids and hope that we can perform in some capacity to help our fellow man. We don't have that anymore. We have people looking out for number one, and they don't care who they hurt to get there. And it's always been that way. But it's never been perpetrated by the powerful media that we have now and the huge change in technology. I mean, when you talk about morals, when you've got a problem in your society, ladies and gentlemen, of 14-year-old girls and boys, but putting pictures of themselves in the nude and sending them out on an airwave, you've got a problem. You can poo-poo it all you want, mummies and daddies, but that's serious stuff, and it's indicative, again, of what we're thinking about ourselves.
That's society today, Don.
That's society today. And it's all because we don't have. World War II, Kenny, we came from, I said this before, Tom Brokaw's book that I've quoted in here, and we're losing them. I just see there were two of the pilots died on the same day of the Black Squadron. I forget where were they from, that famous... Jeepers, I should know that. It's my Tuskegee. Tuskegee. But I mean, when we grew up, I mean, I remember the victory gardens. I remember my neighbors outside. I can still remember them. I was a little boy, 3 and 4 years old, and they had victory gardens across the street in Blanchard Road, South Weymouth. And the neighbors were out there chatting, and they'd bring the hose across if they were going to burn some, the stuff that... the leaves, and then they'd be picking. This would be in the fall, but I mean when the peas and corn and everything, they were picking it and talking and smoking their pipes and cigarettes and laughing. It was a wonderful time. But almost every family lost a loved one or had something happen in someone close to them, and the churches were overflowing every Sunday. People turn to that higher power. Now we think we don't need him anymore. We don't need this. And I'm just calling attention to it, Kenny, What else would you like to mention that I may not have gotten to yet?
Well, I I think you've covered it. You've covered it very well. I liked how you tied the two pieces together. I thought you did that very well.
Well, don't you? I mean, it is really insane when you think of the world that's going on. Now, I just saw tonight in Yemen. Did you see the president and the entire cabinet has resigned? Well, some say, what's that got to do with the Patriots? Well, it doesn't have anything to do, but it has to do with the world. It has to do with conditions in the world that we are going to have to confront one way or the other. And I understand the interest in sport. It takes the attention away from other things. But to make the air, I repeat, to make the air in a football and a football game be the focus of millions of people in a culture, to me, is pretty sad. Pretty sad. Talk about it, fine. But now this thing is going to go on and on. They're already threatening, you hear the people that saying that they should fire, imagine, Kraft should fire Belichick. Yeah, oh, sure.
Yeah, that would be like Kraft firing the tuna.
Yeah, no, but I mean...
He wouldn't fire him for any of the things that he ever said.
Well,
I agree with you that Belichick doesn't do a great job of self-promotion. But he is a great coach. He knows the rules.
But again, that's not what I'm saying either, Kenny. I'm saying in the big scheme of things, I've said this on the radio. I mean, we have people that the Red Sox can do. Now, they just signed. I just saw this. You hear people talk about what they pay corporate executives, okay? It's exorbitant. Of course it is. We bailed out some of these banks, and they're back given. But somebody playing a kid's game, they just signed some player $246 million contract to play a kid's game. I have yet to hear an outrage over what athletes get paid, but they'll gripe about the drug companies. And now, the drug companies save lives. They spend millions in their research, billions, and they save lives. It's not about the Patriots inflating and deflating footballs that give these players millions and millions of dollars. And you'll talk to the fans, and they'll say they don't care what they pay. They're worth every penny of it. I've heard some of these people are supposed to have a brain. They're worth every penny of it. What? So you can watch and win an athletic contest?
It trickles down.
Well, that's what it's done.
It trickles down to the price of tickets.
That's what it's done.
That's how they cover these exorbitant salaries. Now, you and I on fixed incomes could never afford to go to a Patriots game or go to any one of these really big games.
And yet when you talk about tax credits, this state gave the Red Sox and gave Kraft, they get huge tax credits.
Yes, they do.
Nobody, not one reporter, not the Globe. You know why? Because that's where a lot of their money is.
Right.
Okay? That's how disingenuous the media is. Now, so it's not fair. It's not fair, and that's what I'm saying. They're talking about fairness when it comes to sports, but don't expect things to be fair I've said this for years and years. Why should churches, when they were making millions now, and why should Harvard and MIT and BU and all, they don't have to pay full real estate taxes.
No, they don't.
But again, I think it was Bill Weld gave us one of the, I know my favorite governor, Ed King, back in the 70s, he gave Raytheon and someone else a tax credit because they were going to hire another 400 people, and they vilified them. But it was okay to give Harvard and all the rest of them tax credits every year on their real estate. This is the insanity, again, that drives people like me crazy. And when I point this fact out, Harvard grads get mad. They don't say, geez, you're right. That isn't fair.
You're picking on it.
Yeah, you're picking on them.
You're picking on it.
Now, we're going to be running out of time, but the one thing I read about the president's speech, and you know, 5 years ago, Kenny, President Obama, I remember him addressing the country and saying, Americans have to get used to the fact that low gasoline prices are a thing of the past. This is, quote, a thing of the past.
I remember that.
And we are going to have to find alternative energy, the supply of oil, blah, 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 natural resources, blah, 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 blah. State of the Union, and the press, again, is going to allow it, and Democrats are going to, I guarantee Democrats now, because he's had a perfect time, to take credit for the lowering of the gas prices.
No doubt about it.
He had, not only did he have nothing to do with it, he fought it tooth and nail, not wanting to go to the Canadian pipeline, not allowing drilling. They've found this. I've said this for years. Not only do we have plenty of oil, especially in this country, but they have now found former dried up oil fields being restored by what? Nature. Nature. Because oil is a byproduct of the Earth's warming and the heating and all of the things inside this Earth, the aging. All of that is now building up oil. Now, I'm not suggesting we don't look into alternative sources, but the disingenuity of this president and this Democratic leadership and the press is a frightening thing and goes back to the lunatic asylum. They are lunatic. How do you not call it lunacy to cut back on the military in a world that's ready to explode? We're worrying about Iran having a nuclear weapon, never mind the lunatic in North Korea. And we're cutting back our military, which, by the way, also cuts out jobs, and they're cutting their pension back to allow illegals to come into this country, who I started the program out by saying they don't pay taxes, they're working under the table. That's one thing. And the crime rate, so we're paying for the court costs. And on top of that, we have to support them for being in the country, as proven in Los Angeles County when I said 60% of HUD is illegal immigrants. Now, if that isn't insane to you, I can't talk to you. That's all. If you can't, up here, take those things and go 1, 2, 3, 4, and that equals 5, is that not right, Kenny? I mean, is that not insanity? To cut back your defenses and harm those who are supporting the country in the first place, giving up their home life, going to foreign ports, putting their lives in jeopardy, and we're cutting them back in order to allow illegals to come in here who haven't even been checked from their criminality, never mind their diseases.
I have heard from some very good friends that it is their opinion that this current president has done more to harm the United States than any other president has in the past. And they also said to me in almost the same breath, he's more concerned about the rest of the world than he is with the United States.
Oh, there's no question.
Which goes back to one faux pas he had when he was campaigning, where he said, one of his campaign people said that he wanted to be president of the world.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
well, it's a sad state of affairs, ladies and gentlemen, but I, once again, as we wind down, in reference to that comment, I don't know if you heard, but he took an oath of office to uphold the Constitution, and he's gone against the Constitution. Where is Congress to crack down on that? I heard one take of one knew, I think he was a Republican probably, because he had some guts. They'll try to take that out of him. But he came up and said, when is this body, this was in the House, when is this body going to find the courage to stand up and do the right thing when it comes to confronting this president breaking the Constitution that he swore to protect? Protect and preserve. He puts his hand on a Bible, but of course I guess the Bible doesn't mean anything.
The Bible doesn't mean anything.
But again, do you see the insanity, folks? The insane asylum is the press and those around him not only don't confront it, he's one of their own and they are part of it.
Right.
So,
Donnie,
yes.
in the remaining minutes.
In the remaining minutes.
We want to remind people to tune into your radio show on Saturday, what time it's on.
Yes.
They can call you there. And you also want to remind people to check it out on YouTube, the Don McKeag TV Show on YouTube. Go to YouTube, type in Don McKeag TV Show, and away you go.
And away you go, and you don't know where you're going to go.
No, but the numbers have been great since you've been talking about it on radio.
Yes.
On Saturdays, the numbers are going higher and higher every day.
Thank you, Kenny. Well, and I appreciate it. And as I mentioned before, yes, you can go to YouTube and just punch in the Don McKeag Show. And the radio show, as I said, is every Saturday from 11 to 1 on your dial is 95.1 FM, and we're out of Hyannis, Massachusetts on the Cape. Again, I want to thank the Plymouth people that I've heard from. And also, I live in Carver, a very nice town, excuse me. And the things I say here, again, I'm not against anyone, but I am trying very hard to have us all stop and think about what we are going to leave for our children and grandchildren. I feel so much for the young families now, young couples both working, children, the cost of groceries, and now we got gas down. It's wonderful. I filled my tank up for half of what it would normally fill just last week. And I think of the young people, not me, but I think of the young families, what that means to them. And what does the government want to do? They want to raise the taxes on gas. They just are never, ever happy. So God bless. Thanks for joining us. It's the Don McKeag Show in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Good night.